You're listening to The Green Flag with your hosts, Lukas Wacker and Kyle Cushman.
The round of 16 has come and gone. The round of 12 is upon us as the NASCAR Cup Series shifts their focus to the Lone Star State this week at Texas Motor Speedway to kick off their round of 12. The Chaos Round, as we called it a couple weeks ago, we're doing our playoff preview, and it definitely is that as Talladega and the Roval wait after this week. So lots to kind of dissect from Bristol. Big names getting knocked out. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, my championship pick, and Austin Dillon all going out in the round of 16. So big names, lots of guys that are still up for grabs to go for their title. There's only a couple of first-time champions that are still in the mix going for their second title this year. So can that streak continue this year, or are we going to have another first-time champion in 2022? So we'll talk about that, tee up Texas, and kind of just relive a little bit of what Bristol was and what the future of the playoffs may look like here as we head into week 4 of them. But before we get into that, how you doing today, Kyle?
Yeah, doing good. Looking forward to get the Chaos Round, like you said, underway this weekend. Obviously, Texas is in a race that a lot of us look forward to say the least. But the one saving grace is that it's technically a new race this season, with the All-Star race being there, but with a different package and some weird different things in terms of format and all that kind of stuff. So going there this weekend, we'll see what the racing is like. Going optimistic and hope that we get something decent out of it. But it's the one kind of quote unquote predictable race out of this round. And the 12 drivers left in the playoffs that are eligible for the championship will be trying to bank as many points as they can get, because we know that it can very easily go wrong in the next 2 races at Talladega and the Roval, where even a driver at the top of the grid currently, like Chase Elliott, who's plus 31, all it takes is a mediocre race at Texas and then a wreck at Talladega, and your back is up against the wall at the Roval. So really looking forward to see what is going to happen in terms of the playoffs and things like that this weekend, how the non-playoff drivers affect it now that we have some big names not in the playoffs anymore, and should be a good weekend of racing. Looking forward to diving into it all today.
Yeah, of course. And we've got, the first 3 races of the playoffs have been as unpredictable as we may have seen it, especially the outcome, the winners specifically. 3 non-playoff guys sweeping an entire round. We have never seen that in the history of the playoffs. We've never seen a guy open the playoffs with a non-playoff victory. Like, so many different things have been thrown. New history has been rewritten this season. And I mean, how can you not love it from a sports perspective if you're NASCAR, that this next gen car is still supplying the non-playoff guys? They're still in it. And that's like one of the most unique things about NASCAR, is that you have people that are not in the playoffs still competing each and every week, and they can mix it up. And they've definitely come to play. Keselowski looked like he was en route for a win before the flat tires. I mean, the flat tires were definitely something that needs to be addressed. It seemed like more of a Ford issue, but like Bristol was maybe a bit of a letdown in terms of like overall racing, a lot of chaos for sure because of the mechanical failures. And we have not seen mechanical failures to that extent in a long, long time, whether that was the power steering stuff with Ford and Toyota. And then Chevy seemed to kind of just escape it. They just kind of got involved in incidents at times. So, Bristol, it's not exactly what the short track product that we've come to recognize there over the past couple of years. We've been kind of spoiled, I would say, with the product that we've gotten from the previous generation of car there, especially in the last couple of years. They really seem to find that right package with the low line with the PJ1, and then getting the high line and having a pretty competitive race with both lanes going. But this time, seemed like the top was very, very dominant after it came in after the first half of the race or so. Thankfully, the top did come in. It wasn't just a bottom feeder race. But what was your overall impression of Bristol, Kyle, and with the next gen car? And then we kind of look forward to what the playoffs have in store in the future.
Yeah, for starters, Bristol's Bristol. It's never going to be a boring race. There's always going to be some kind of chaos. There's always going to be lap cars that get in the way, or just an interesting battle because of track position and things like that. So it's always going to be an interesting race. And we obviously got that. Granted, it was mainly due to some tire troubles and things like that, and less of the on-track actually racing product. But we did still have some moments where there was some good side-by-side racing and some hard battles for passes and stuff like that. We know what the issues are with this car and short tracks and stuff like that. At some places, it's due to the shifting and things like that. At a place like Bristol, it was less about the shifting and more about the corner speed. And when you have higher corner speeds, it means that you can carry more speed through the corner and it's harder to pass. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically in the definition of what's happening. And we saw that quite a bit, especially when the high line is the preferred line. It's really difficult to pass. And so with those higher corner speeds, makes it harder to pass. We'll see what kind of changes happen into the future, whether it's a more horsepower type thing, so you have to slow the car down more and there's more opportunity there, whether there's some aerodynamic changes and things like that to the car. We'll see that come over the next few months when those slight changes and rule changes and stuff will be announced for short tracks and things like that. But at the moment, Bristol isn't what it was with the old car, but it was still absolutely an entertaining race and certainly something that I enjoy tuning into nonetheless. So absolutely some things to change and fix up, but definitely wasn't the horrendous race that some were kind of making it out to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the biggest thing that came out of it was the parts and everything like that. I mean, Trix gave the power string and the middle finger. That was an hilarious moment. But like, I was just curious just to have this conversation just because it is such a big topic right now. Do you think, the big teams are obviously having the problem with it, right? Hendrick and Gibbs and Penske, all these teams are like a bit more vocal with it because, they spent all those resources in the last generation of car. And that's what gave them, the advantage. And that's why they were so dominant. We didn't see this many different winners in a season when, the next gen car was designed to do this with the non-playoff guys and just having an overall spread across the field where everybody can compete each and every week. And that's why the win and in kind of format is so intriguing right now, because it really is a situation where we could have some guys that win a race and maybe not make the playoffs next year if it continues in this kind of trend. But do you think that, the teams should have a little bit more say on some of these parts or some sort of design elements so that, it seems like they're obviously clever. They have the best engineers in the business for each of their teams. They could come up with parts and stuff like that to make sure that they're not, they're not malfunctioning and breaking down in the middle of the race when they don't really have control over it. Do you think that NASCAR should go back to being a little bit more lenient with that and allow teams to maybe change some things to, prevent these failures from happening in a race?
No, in the way that you're kind of putting it out there, you either need to be all in on being a spec series with the exception of engines and things like that, or all the way out. Either everything is provided like the way NASCAR is currently doing it this season, everything needs to be provided and there are specific things that you make yourselves, or completely out and you make everything yourself and show up to the track and everything you bring to the track you made. The wishy-washy, like, okay, we'll allow you to help out with this, or you can change things on this, but not this, just leads to even more confusion and chaos and disqualifications and all this kind of stuff. So I understand where the point's coming from. It's frustrating when a part that you didn't make malfunctions or breaks and things like that. But that's also a reality of a spec type series where things are provided and things like that. NASCAR needs to do a better job of getting a handle on things. We also need to remember this is the first season with a new car that hasn't been tested over 500 miles on a short track and things like this. And there's going to be problems that arise that they didn't foresee happening and give them a chance to rectify it. And if it's a problem over multiple races, like we've seen with certain things like fires and stuff like that, then I think it's warranted to be critical and push for change and things like that. But we have to see them kind of get to that point where it's a issue over multiple races and things like that. And we've seen the power steering and stuff be an issue before, but not to the extent that we saw it over the weekend. So if it's an issue again, the next time we go to a short track, or if it's an issue again, whenever, then we can start having that discussion of, okay, NASCAR, it's time to push things forwards. But I certainly don't think that it's something where they should be like, okay, teams, you can go ahead and manufacture all these stuff yourself, but not all these other parts. You need to be all in or all out for the spec type stuff. And so if NASCAR wants to keep it the way that it is this year, where we've seen everybody basically be able to compete at some point, keep it that way. If you want to go back to where everybody makes their own stuff, then do that, but don't do the wishy-washy thing.
I agree with you on that 100%. I think you're spot on with that. Just like, I think that there's so many different routes that NASCAR could have gone with this car. And I think they ultimately chose a very logical path for trying to grow the sport in a way that it's competitive each and every week. And if you do take away that kind of, essence of what the car was originally designed to be, where it's spec, and allow the teams to take things into their own hands a little bit, then, you're losing that element of it for sure. And I think the last generation of car, we got so accustomed to not seeing this for so long, because everything became so durable from the top teams that it was like, almost breathtaking that there's a mechanical failure or an engine failure or something like that along those lines, that it was like a big moment. But this season, we've seen that, it's more of an attrition race, and people knew that going into Bristol because we had no idea what this car was going to do there. But I think more of the issues stem from not having a tire that falls off from Goodyear, and that needs to be worked on a little bit more engineered. That's all going to come with time as well. So I think the issue more stems from that. I don't mind having the mechanical breakdowns as much. The tire issues with the air pressures and stuff, that's more on the teams. I don't think that's necessarily a car problem. That's more of a team and their air pressures and all that stuff. That's their issues that they're dealing with. We saw that specifically with the Fords. I mean, they had the worst issues by far, and they've been the ones that have been the slowest throughout the most of the season. So they're maybe trying to play a little bit of catch up, being a little bit more aggressive than maybe the Chevrolets have been or the Toyotas have been on air pressures this season, to try and maybe gain that little bit of an advantage. Saying that, though, Chris Buescher didn't have any issues on Saturday night, and he won the race. So, I think that there's a lot of different things that NASCAR can do in the future here to just, make the parts themselves and fix their own issues. It doesn't have to come down to the teams to design everything. NASCAR knows the problems. I'm sure they wouldn't want this to be a case every single time that we go to a track like Bristol, or we've seen the mechanical failure so far this season. They don't want that, that element of surprise for the teams, that it's out of their hands per se. I'm sure they would want to make a car that's, a little bit more reliable for those things that are spec. So I'm intrigued to see where they kind of go in the off season. How much they want to put back into the team's hands, if any, or do they just want to fix it internally, talk with the teams and figure out a solution so that they can move forward where this isn't as much of a problem that costs guys in a playoff race, in a cutoff race specifically, where it's pressures on and it's, if that's, Kyle Busch had the engine issue, that's a separate thing. But if you have, one of the guys that's on the bubble and they have a huge issue, maybe like, if Ryan Blaney was a power steering issue, for example, none of the Toyotas that were in the playoffs had a power steering issue. But if it's Ryan Blaney that's having that kind of an issue and then he falls outside the cutoff line, well, then that's unfortunate for Blaney. And if he's the only victim of that, it's not really a fair element when it's not a design part by the team. It's a NASCAR spec part that failed. But, that's not the case. That's not what happened on Saturday night. And I think overall, the attrition stuff was kind of a fun element. It brings me back to like when I first started watching NASCAR, like all the engine failures, and it was like you really had to put a lot of emphasis in development and R&D and everything like that. So it kind of comes down to that a little bit now, but with the spec car, it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's more of an apples to oranges for some of that stuff. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it is a current topic. But moving forward here, Kyle, looking ahead, we lost some big names. We both had Tyler Reddick in our championship 4. So this is a big surprise for at least us. And I know a lot of people in the industry, like we're looking at that 8 cars could be a surprise candidate. This round shapes up well for him, this round of 12. Then you look at Homestead, he's probably a favorite to win there. So that's a big loss. 2 past champions, the multiple time champion in Kyle Busch and the 2014 Cup Series champion in Harvick are out. Then Austin Dillon, the guy that made it in the regular season finale. RCR's past, present, and future all getting knocked out in round 1. So big storylines there. And how do you see maybe those 4 drivers and the non-playoff drivers specifically moving forward here? How do you see that them, kind of mixing it up with the playoff guys as the rounds kind of go on and we see more and more guys get eliminated?
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything for the drivers that are eliminated. They're still going to go for wins. That's the whole point of being in the sport. And whether you're in the playoffs or not, we saw it in this very round. It doesn't matter if you're in the playoffs or not. You're in the sport to go try to win races. And if you've got the car to go and win a race, well, you're going to go up there and compete and try to win the damn race. And for the drivers that are eliminated, especially the Harvick, the Kyle Busch, the Tyler Reddick, less so Austin Dillon, just because we haven't seen that race winning speed as much this year. But for those 3 especially, they're probably going to be up there. And I'd put money on Tyler Reddick, Kevin Harvick, or Kyle Busch winning at least one race before the end of the season, and probably even two, if we're being honest, when we look at how the schedule breaks down. The reason we had Tyler Reddick in our championship 4 is because this round shapes up really well when you look at his numbers at Texas, and also the road course coming up in this round of 3 races here. Obviously 2 wins on road courses this year for Reddick. And then you look at the next round and it's his best track at Homestead and things like that. So if he could have made it through to this point in the playoffs, then yeah, he would have been a great contender. And you could absolutely see him going out and winning the Roval and winning Homestead and finishing the year with 4 wins and still being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Kyle Busch, he's shown speed even in the last round, just had mechanical problems. And Kevin Harvick had just terrible luck the entire time. And had the cautions broke right, or had he had a clean pit stop, we might have been talking about him today as the winner at Bristol as well. So those 3 especially are going to be guys that are going to be contending for wins, going to be contending in top 5s, in top 10s, and mixing it up with those playoff drivers over this round and until the championship race as well.
Yeah, you got some guys in there that are not very familiar with this situation. You've got Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, and you've got Austin Cindric. All 3 of those guys are not really even Ross Chastain.
I was going to say Ross Chastain first playoffs.
You kind of forget about him because he's so far ahead in the playoffs.
Austin Cindric first playoffs. Daniel Suarez first playoffs. The rest of the guys have at least some experience in the playoffs and at this point and things like that. But you've got 4 guys right there alone that are first time in their playoffs, made it through the first round, some of them by the skin of their teeth. But then you feel good for about 2 days and then you're like, oh crap, we're -4 again. It's time to go.
I'm curious to see, we saw the first about top 7 or 8 guys in this past round lay it on the field. Like they were so far ahead. They clinched their spots, basically. They were in no, concern going into Bristol, but now it's all reset. Can the guys that just made it due to bad circumstances for the 3 guys specifically that we just mentioned there with Harvick, Reddick, and Busch, those guys probably should be on to the next round if things fall their way based off of, things not being taken out of their hands. You think Reddick with the flat tire at Kansas, that's more of a setup issue, but he was in the lead when that happened. Harvick with countless issues, and then Kyle Busch with 2 blown engines, one while he's leading with 24 laps to go at Darlington. So, there's a lot of different things that didn't fall right for those 3 guys, and it's unfortunate for sure.
And that's the format though, right? That's the format.
That's what NASCAR has this format designed to do, where it's, a spectacle. It's, you don't know who's going to make it out of the next round. Each and every week, you got to be good for 3 races, and then you reset. Can these guys that just squeaked in, I'm talking the Cindrics, I'm talking the Briscoes, and I'm talking the Suarezes, that can they reset and get refocused here going to a 1.5 mile track that you need points at, that you can predict a little bit for Texas? I know the All-Star race was kind of chaotic too when we saw the flat tire with Busch and then Chastain goes flying and everything like that. So if we say, quote unquote, a more predictable race that Texas has been prone to be
by far the most predictable of this round at the very least. Yeah.
Can they take advantage of these guys if the ones that were so good in the first round now have the bad luck bug that hit the 3 guys in the first round that we all thought would go deep in the playoffs? I mean, Harvick was no slouch to end the season. He was on fire going into these playoffs.
Wins.
Yeah. And we wrote him off.
Are they the only team that's won back-to-back races this year?
I think maybe Chase with the Pocono win in Nashville. I'm not sure if that's back-to-back or not.
But he's either the only one or one of 2.
The fact that we can't recall that shows how much of a competitive season it has been. So Texas, you have to take advantage of it for those 3 guys specifically. Bowman had a very impressive first round.
I wouldn't even say just take advantage, just hold serve. Don't have a terrible day.
Keep it clean. A solid point. No mistakes.
Get something in the 20 to 30 point range. Maybe get a stage point or 2. Don't put yourself in a hole going into Talladega. That's the main thing. So you don't try to overdo it and get through. And then if you can have a clean Talladega, all it takes is a clean Texas, a clean Talladega, and suddenly you're plus 15 to the cut line going into the Roval because everybody else has a problem at Talladega, or everybody else had a decent race at Texas and a terrible day at Talladega, things like that. That's all it takes. So it would be great if some of those guys could have a real standout day, get a nice top 10 finish, get a bunch of stage points, stuff like that. But I think they also don't necessarily need to. in order to advance. Just hold serve, have a clean day, and see where you're kind of at going into the Roval after the chaos that will be Talladega.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's a couple guys there that, kind of stand out a little bit, specifically Daniel Suarez and their 1.5 speed this season. And I think that he's one to watch this weekend, not foreshadowing anything for our draft a little bit later on, but, the Trackhouse guys have been fast. Maybe they've lost that edge a little bit, as the season has progressed. They started out super strong. I think caught the competition off guard by a lot of means, but they have kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Can they refine that form going into Texas where they will desperately need it? Because, I mean, Suarez won. They both have won races on road courses this season, both Chastain and Suarez. So there are no slouches there. But can they do it in that crunch time moment when it comes down to the Roval if they really need to? When you look at Chase Elliott, who is the king around that place right now. I mean, he's just been so good. We'll see if he can continue that in this next gen car. He hasn't been as dominant this season as we have seen in previous years with the previous gen car, but you have to expect that he's going to be up there for the victory. If AJ Allmendinger's in the field, you got to assume that he's got to be one to watch at the Roval. So Briscoe, Reddick, all these kind of guys, they're all in contention going into the Roval. So you cannot depend on that track to be a place where you can get points. So Texas is a big race for these guys. And, for the playoff favorites, Kyle, are you surprised by any of their performances so far in the playoffs? And if there's anybody that did concern you in that first round, who was it? And what do you think your expectations of them are going into round 2 are?
Yeah. So starting on the flip side, I was impressed by William Byron, especially. They showed a lot more speed than they had over the summer, and were up contending for laps led and race wins and stuff like that. And so I was really impressed by their turnaround, especially doing really well to get up there and contend. Christopher Bell as well. He was the only guy that locked himself in on points going into the final race of the last round. Very impressive considering he wasn't one of the guys with a huge gap to the field at the top of the regular season standings and stuff like that. So they were very impressive. And honestly, the guys that moved on are all guys that kind of showed solid rounds. And that's kind of what you expect in the round of 16, where it's the people getting eliminated are the people that have the big troubles. And
you don't need anything flashy in that round.
You don't need anything especially flashy, like you just said. And so sure, there are guys that didn't show me a ton, like your Austin Cindricks and guys that are right on the cut line that barely make it through. But you also don't expect them to have those big performances. I don't think there was anybody that really disappointed. I think maybe the one that you could maybe look at is Kyle Larson wasn't as dominant as you maybe thought, given some of the tracks and stuff like that, but he still had a really solid round. They weren't in any problem at the cut line or anything like that. So we'll see how things go at Texas, especially because I think that's where things will get a lot more interesting just as the pressure starts to mount and things like that. But coming out of the round of 16, there's nobody that I look at on the table and I'm like, man, I really don't know about them going into the round of 12 because of the round of 16. I think everybody who moved on at least showed something at some track.
Yeah, I agree. And there's some guys in here that I think this round plays more into their hands than the last round as well. Yeah. So is that going to be a huge factor? I would imagine it's going to have definitely some level of influence, but
to that point, just look at the guy who's literally last in the standings right now, that's still eligible for the playoffs. Austin Cindric is came out of super speedway, obviously the Daytona 500. We've got Talladega, and he's got 2 or 3 top 5 finishes at road courses this year. That's where we finish it off. If he can have a solid Texas, a guy that everyone's basically going to have written off as an easy out in this round could very well make it to the round of 8 and knock somebody else out. This is a round that shapes up for a lot of quote unquote specialist drivers. And there's a bunch of those behind the cut line right now. When you look at Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric, and to a lesser extent, but also road course winner this year, Daniel Suarez.
Yeah. And for me in that first round, I think I was maybe let down a little bit by Chase Elliott.
To an extent. Yeah.
If you almost, scratch off Darlington. I mean, he wasn't really that fast, but then he wrecked. So very early on in that race, but he was still, in such a big points advantage over the rest of the competition. He was never really in danger in that first round. Got through Kansas pretty clean, but then Bristol, I know he finished second, but he was not really a factor that entire race when I was expecting him, because I picked him second in my picks last week in the draft. I was expecting that car to come out flying out of the gates a little bit more, be a bit more competitive, leading laps, but he never really got up there until late in the going when a lot of the cautions kind of fell his way, and he was able to just, not have any malfunctions, no mechanical failures, no flat tires, no nothing on the 9 car. He was able to just kind of nurse his way through and be in the right position at the right time. But I thought, with how much people have talked about him, he has the most wins, 4 wins this season, 2 more than anybody else. Like, this is the championship favorite. He won the regular season title. I was expecting a little bit more kind of, coming out of the gates a little bit more quicker, I'd say. They didn't really show too much speed, and their qualifying pace was nowhere near each and every race. They were all back in the mid-20s. So, like, there's something clearly amiss with their qualifying setup. He wasn't able to hit a lap, but then it took him a long time to make his way through the field, and a little longer than I think most Chase Elliott fans or even non-Chase Elliott fans would have expected him to, considering those three tracks are up there with, tracks we expect him to be running in the top 3 at and leading laps consistently. So one to watch, I think, for this round for sure. If it gets off to a bad start on a 1.5-mile track at Texas where they don't have the qualifying speed, it's difficult to pass at that track. Super speedways have been hit and miss for him there, specifically Talladega. He has a previous win there, but I don't necessarily think of him as a super speedway racer. And if it came down to it, if he gets some bad luck in both of those races, you look at the Roval, he's got to shine there more than he probably has ever done in his career. Not to say that, Chase will put him in that position.
He wrecked and still won, so I don't know quite to that extent.
I meant to, like, the fact that I don't think he'll be in that position, but just something to keep your eye on if that lack of pace and speed continues going on into this round. But guy that impressed me, you mentioned him, Christopher Bell, 100%. That guy probably had one of the fastest cars, if not the fastest car at Bristol. Without the flat tire, he probably wins that race, keeping that track position. But of course, getting the flat tires consistently throughout the night definitely hurt a lot of drivers that could have won the race. But Bell arguably could have been the fastest car at Kansas. He got a lot of points at Darlington too. And then I think he was probably the best car at Bristol too. So for a guy that came in there into the playoffs with not too many playoff points, I think they did a good job of managing the stages and getting overall points at the end of the race. They weren't just, fast in the stage and they couldn't finish a race. They were able to put an entire race together, which is so key during this time of year. I hope that Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell can continue to do that for the remainder of the playoffs, because they're a team that I don't see too many weaknesses with. So overall, Bell has to be super proud of his efforts in that round, and I can't wait to see what he does in this next little bit here. So those are 2 guys that kind of stood out for me on both the positive and the negative side in that round of 16.
Yeah, and just more on Christopher Bell, like, they're on a really strong run. Obviously, they've got the 3 top 5s in the last round, which is, I don't know if you've heard this, pretty good. Finishing top 5 in all 3 races of a round. You're probably going to advance if you do that. Even looking before that, at the end of the regular season, he had a 2nd place finish at Richmond, which he almost won if there was an extra lap in that race. And so going into this next round, they've had a lot of speed. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of confidence on that team. My slight concern is just the lack of a sub 1.5-mile oval in this round, because that's been their bread and butter all year. You look at the win at New Hampshire, you look at Richmond finish, you look at Darlington and Bristol in this last round, all tracks that are under 1.5 miles where they've been really strong over his entire career, but especially this season, basically being number 2 at that track type all season long to Chase Elliott. And with the performance over this last round, maybe even moving into the number 1 spot at that track type. You look to the next round, you've got Texas there, which is 1.5 miles, where they've had some success at that track type this year, but has not necessarily been that same level of track in the past, or the same level of speed and laps led and things like that. And then you've got 2 kind of chaos races where we know Toyotas kind of struggle in general at super speedways due to strategy and things like that. They're going to be behind the 8 ball there. And the Charlotte Roval is the Charlotte Roval. He could go out and win the race. He could finish 36th. We don't know. So big test coming up at Texas, which is a place that Bell has had a couple standout performances before, but will need a really big start to this round if they're to feel the same level of comfort they did in the last round.
Yeah, for me, it's immediately the red flags start to go off when I look at the Roval for the Toyotas. There's only 2 left, Tamlin and Bell, but with the literally no speed on the road courses this season. Bell, I mean, got the top 5 at Coda, but apart from that, I mean, Toyota has been nowhere on the road courses this entire season. Of course, a Roval is different than a traditional road course that is designed to be a road course.
But it ain't that different, right?
But it ain't that different.
Yeah.
We have seen in previous years, if you are good on the road courses, you are also good at the Roval. There's not really too much disparity in results there. If you're a good road racer, it typically trends to you, performing decently and having to set yourself up for success at the Roval. So, the fact that Toyota has been off to such a sluggish start with this next gen car on this type of track, the concern is definitely there. I wonder how much emphasis they've been able to take, because I guess the last one would have been Watkins Glen, correct? For road courses this season, or yeah,
I think so,
like
yeah.
they were pretty good. They had definitely shown some improvement, I will say, but they weren't anything to stand out. Anything, they didn't do too much to stand out to be at the front that we typically see from there are no slouch of road races. Those 4 guys specifically at Gibbs, they can all compete. They all can do well at that type of track.
Yep.
They just haven't quite shown it so far. So I had Christopher Bell out this round and Denny Hamlin out in this round. We did our playoff predictions specifically for the Roval reason. But from their performances so far in the first round, Hamlin's got Kyle Busch's pit crew now moving forward. So how much does that improve their success? Because that has been his nemesis, basically, I would say his entire career is pit road penalties. I mean, it's not just this season. I mean, he has been how many races have we said that Denny Hamlin has thrown out the window because of a pit road penalty, whether that's early in the race and they can never recover, or late in the race when they're in a good position and then they throw it all away when it matters most. That has been something that's troubled that team. So can this new pit crew with it has been top 3 in the entire series this year, can they step up to the plate here and really do it for Denny Hamlin? Because they definitely did it for Kyle Busch this season. They were not the reason that they had 18 cars out of the playoffs by any means. So, the Hendrick guys, they've got all 4 guys still in the playoffs. They're the team to beat right now in terms of having numbers and strength in numbers. So, can they lose one of those guys in this round? Absolutely. When you look at their playoff point positions, anybody can go out in this round if they have enough bad luck. So,
I mean, they've got a third of the drivers left. It's likely that they lose one of them.
True, but we've seen crazier things happen. Is this the year where we see all 400 guys in the Final Four? I doubt it, but they still are the only team that has that opportunity. Or I guess Penske can have 3, but they don't have a whole. Well,
Trackhouse can have 2, but
they don't have a full quartet to fill it up.
Nobody can do the Roush thing where they steal all the spots.
They can't do that. Those days, I think, are probably long and gone. Let's
I don't know. Never say never.
Do you think that a team could ever do that again?
Yeah, I think they could. Yeah.
Yeah. Which team would you lean towards looking at next season's roster? You give Hendrick over the edge of Gibbs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a fun little question.
No. I think it's a great question. I just think that Hendrick has the best combination of young talent, elite talent, consistent speed over years, manufacturer, just all of it, where I could see it. Obviously, it's not likely, but if there were a team to do it, I think it would be them.
It's not a bad bet. It's not a bad bet whatsoever. So moving forward here, let's pose the question: how many non-playoff guys do we think are going to win the final 7 races of the season? Like, what do you think is a good over/under here? Would you say to set this at 2.5?
My mind went to 3.5 as the over/under, but I think
because you got to think, as guys get eliminated.
The odds of it happening get higher and higher as we move on, obviously.
Yeah. We'll answer this question first, and then I got another one after this that I think should be interesting. But if you had to set, so are we setting it at 3.5? Is that what we're going to say?
What do you want to set it at?
It depends on who. It depends on who goes out in this round. If it's the guys that are near the bottom, I'm going 2.5. But if it's some of the big guys,
okay, well, let's do it this way: 2.5. Are you taking the over, or the under?
I'll take the over.
I'm taking the over as well. Okay, so let's move the lineup. 3.5. Are you taking the over or the under?
That's a great question.
Texas, Talladega, the Roval, Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, Phoenix.
Oh man. Like I said, it all depends on who goes out in this round. Like if it's one of the big guys, then I would probably say over. But if it's, Suarez, Briscoe, Cindric, and then another guy, then I'd say no. So because it gives them, 3 more
Make the
races
damn
there.
pick.
I'm gonna say under. I'm gonna say I'll
Okay.
stick with 3. I can't go with 4. I'm gonna see the playoff guys can turn their ship around and start to pick up the pace and win some races here. That's just me being maybe hopeful, but I think 3 is probably a realistic number.
3 is the number in my head. I look at Talladega, where odds are it's not going to be a playoff guy. I look at the Roval and Tyler Reddick's success and things like that, and think
I
that
look at Homestead
could
more than
definitely happen.
I'm going to see the Roval.
I know.
I
was just going in order. Let me
Okay.
get there.
You're looking at Tyler Reddick a lot.
But then you get to the round of 8, and you've got whoever gets eliminated in this round plus everybody else. And you look at Vegas, you look at Homestead, where some of the favorites are going to be non-playoff guys. And then I think once you get to, depending on who gets eliminated here, Martinsville and then the championship race is ones where you feel pretty strongly that those will go to playoff guys. Mm-hmm. So 3 is the number for me. I can't take the over at 4. I just can't see Talladega, Roval, Homestead, and another one on top of that.
Okay.
We'll see.
I can't with another question now.
Okay.
Do we get over 20 different winners this season?
No.
Do you think we reach 20?
We're at 19 now, right?
Yeah. Yes. Do we get another new winner?
Yes.
Who do you think it's going to be?
Oh man. Here we go.
The fact that Truex and Blaney are on this list is insane.
That's right. Okay, no, I'll say we get over 20 then.
Okay. You're going to go over?
Yep.
I'm going to say 20. I don't think Blaney or Truex is going to win.
I think
that's what I'm going with.
I think Blaney wins, and I think we get somebody else winning at Talladega.
Yeah, man, that's a great point. I think Brad Keselowski's somebody I'm looking at. Like, is it like if they can replicate
say
speed
Talladega.
on a super speedway? Yeah.
Say Talladega. The guys that don't have wins. Eric Almirola has a super speedway.
Justin Haley
has a super speedway win. Michael McDowell has a super speedway win. Brad Keselowski has a super speedway win. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has a super speedway win. Ty Dillon has had some really solid top 5s and not good. Corey LaJoie nearly won at Atlanta. Those are what, 6, 7 different options, and that's not even including AJ Allmendinger, who could go win the Roval. Like, there's a lot of really solid guys
insane
that can still go up and do it. So I think
stick with
Blaney
20.
gets a win, and I think somebody else gets a win, whether it's a road course or elsewhere. So I'll put it at 21 for myself.
Okay, I'll stick with 20 then. Just not just to be different, but I honestly think that the playoff guys will start to, come into shape here and win some races. But
I think we get to 21.
Okay, and then finally, does the champion win the race this year? The final race
finale? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There won't be
so?
that will never happen in the Cup Series.
I think this could be the year, man. I really do.
They'll snipe the car if they have to. Like they will not allow a situation where the race winner in Phoenix in the Cup Series isn't the champion. I kind of
want to see it. I kind of want to see it. Like I
want to see it from the fact that I don't like the format.
I know you do it. That's why I didn't want to pose the question too. Like, would you want that?
It'll never happen.
You don't like the format.
Look at the way that every single time they're the 4 fastest cars of the 4 championship.
100%. I get that, but this season has not been that way. It's just not. Like if it's gonna happen, I don't know. Man. I don't know. I think that this could be the year where somebody
will give them an extra 40 horsepower if they have to. Like,
no, come on, they wouldn't do that.
They wouldn't.
No.
You don't think?
No, come on. If somebody ever found
see them doing it, but
I doubt it. Then it'd be so evident, though. I don't.
It isn't already that all 4 guys are always the 4 fastest.
Well, it's convenient. I'll say that. But I think this could. I think if I had to weight percentage wise, I think I'm leaning 60%. It does happen that there's a not the champion wins the race, and 40% it does.
I'm 90% it does.
Okay. A little bit of variance there, a little bit. Just
like what's the highest or like what's the most laps led, like any of those stats that a non-championship guy has led in or finished in the championship race? Like it's got to be Larson at
Well,
Homestead laps led
Larson,
probably.
well,
But then when
Larson
he
for,
did it, he backed out of it. Like
yeah, I think it kind of depends on how the race flow goes to an extent. But like if it's long green flag runs and it's a green flag run to the end and the guy is just super quick, I mean, I don't think that it's going to be too much of a fight then. But if it's on a late race restart, I'm sure that the guy that's going for a win, if he's up there.
God, my hope is that a championship contender gets punted by a non-championship guy on a restart. That's my dream. I want to
That's
see
your
it
dream?
because then they'll get rid of the format probably. Actually, no, they wouldn't. But
I don't think they're. I don't think they're ever going to get rid of this.
they
at
wouldn't.
Least not
No,
the foreseeable
they
future.
won't. They won't.
But I just thought those three questions were interesting
Oh, that was
to
good.
kind of delve into. But yeah, going into Texas, we've got the Xfinity Series playoffs kickoff. Noah Gragson continues to throw up and win, so he just keeps on rolling there. I don't know. Do you want to talk quickly about Xfinity? Who do you think is going to win the championship?
Justin Allgaier.
You always pick Allgaier. You're such an Allgaier lover on this.
I'm
I
not
feel like
an Allgaier lover at all, but I look at how Junior Motorsports has been the dominant team this year, and that's his best track. And I look at the other guys that are going to contend, and if it's Junior Motorsports versus Junior Motorsports, I'm taking Allgaier over Gragson every day of the week at Phoenix. And it's the question of whether Ty Gibbs can kind of compete at Phoenix because AJ Allmendinger has always kind of been not very good at Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I just don't see Joe Gibbs Racing being able to compete with Junior Motorsports at that track specifically this year. So we've seen in the past guys like Cindric, whoever go up and be able to contend for it. I just think that there's a dominant team who also happens to have the best driver in the field at that track. So that's my point. But the big point is if they get there, because there's quite a bit of competition there. So
yep, I think it's going to be an interesting battle for like the top 6 or so who can maybe win a race at the right time or whatever for the Xfinity Series. But got to show them a little bit of love because they are kicking off their playoffs this week. But anything else you want to talk about, Kyle, going into Texas that you want to wrap up from the round of 16, or shall we get into the draft?
No, I think we're good to move on unless you can think of anything else.
No, I got nothing else. Bristol is come and gone. Overall, a success. It's Bristol. We can't call it a disappointment. It's Bristol. It's the best race. The atmosphere was electric. The fans came out in full support for the race. I'm glad that we got to see that. And that race should have 2 dates on the regular concrete. Gotta always say that. But let's get into the draft, Kyle. We have a little bit of a shakeup this week, don't we?
Yeah, we did. You got your first win. Congratulations. Which is funny because you won in our fantasy segment, but not in like our personal season long on the app, which is hilarious because I also forgot to change somebody out who had 1 point, but that's a whole different thing. You won with a whopping 149 points this week. We had a tough time to say the least. I had a $131, so not great for either of us. And of course, if you just drafted guys that we didn't take out of 10 picks, well, you would have had 186 points, the race winner as well. So funny that my final pick as well was debating between William Byron and Ross Chastain, who both came out of with 40 points. So literally didn't change anything for me that entire debate.
The streak is over though. The streak is over. The 9th overall pick streak. But I was nervous. I have to say, because Willie B was up there in that top 3 I texted you. I was like, here he is. He's showing up.
But I will also give you a little note that in our personal fantasy season long, I'm only 3 races behind you now. I'll just give you that little heads up.
What's the overall though? Like, I mean,
you're up by 253 points overall. But in the head-to-head, it's 16-13.
Yeah, it's close. Not. It's getting there. It's getting.
I gotta go on a bit of a run, but it's close.
Yeah, you could do it though with these tracks and how unpredictable these playoffs have been. I don't doubt that you could, because I get cursed on this show, and
it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
You hold your own destiny this week because you have the choice. Do you want the first overall pick, which you have not had yet, or would you like the 2-3 wraparound? You've had the 2-3 wraparound every single time. You
Yep.
chose it the first week. Do you
Yeah.
still want to stick with it, or do you want that first overall pick?
Feel like it's like deal or no deal right now. Do I want to like switch the case? Like, do you want that last case that you did not pick originally, or do you want to stick with the one that you originally picked? Do you want to trust your gut? It's a tough situation. You almost need like the deal or no deal music playing right now,
Yeah.
and like the red
Mainly
spotlight.
because you're stalling as you try to think of what one you're going to take. But yeah.
Why would I do that? Why would
I
I
have
do
no
that?
clue. I have no clue. It's not like you've had like multiple days to think of which choice you're going to go with.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time stressing about this. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
This is a tough situation, but
Yeah.
because Kyle Larson's gone first overall every time,
He
and
has.
I know that streak is probably going to continue either way, whichever one goes first here, I think. So I will, for the sake of keeping it easy on both of us, okay, I'm going to defer because I don't want to have to switch the templates about,
Wow.
and you have to switch the templates
Wow.
about
Is
for
that
the
really
social stuff.
why? Is that really why?
No, because I like when you go first and I can judge my lineup off of it. So I'm going to take the 2-3
Interesting.
wraparound. I'm going to take the 2-3 wraparound because I like having the back-to-back second and third pick. I like that more than getting a first overall guy going into Texas. I don't have a feel. So
Screw you. I wanted
gonna,
the 2-3 so bad.
I'm going to take the 2-3. Yeah. There we go.
Where
You wanted me to take the first overall pick.
I did want you to take the first overall pick.
So I had to do a little bit of mind games with you. The old Uno reverse card has come out. It's been played. First overall pick, sir. Is Kyle Larson going to keep that average of 1.0 in the draft selection?
I need a second because I really thought you were taking first overall.
Yeah, I've got him right along the ropes.
Yeah, you do have me on the ropes. I really thought you were going first overall there.
No,
It's between two guys for myself.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you the two guys because I hope that I can get both of them still.
Okay.
But yeah, this is a tough one. Because as you mentioned, Kyle Larson has gone first overall every single time, but he also hasn't been the highest scoring driver any of the times.
Nope.
So do you keep going to that well? Do you go elsewhere? Where do you go for the first overall pick?
Quit stalling.
I'm not going Kyle Larson with the first overall pick.
Oh man, that's gonna be a heartbreaker for all the Larson lovers out there.
I know. I know you'll be taking him with one of the 2 or the 3, which is I don't love. But I like this guy too much to pass on him and potentially miss on him for the 2-3. I'm taking your All-Star race winner, Ryan Blaney, first overall.
Whoa. I was not expecting him to go first.
Yep. I like him that much.
How come? Yeah. Let's delve into this because this is a new guy at the front of the field here. What's with Ryan Blaney all of a sudden? You picked him 4th last week. You pick him first this week. What's going on? Is this the week that you think Blaney's going to get that win?
We'll get to that later. Ryan Blaney over the past 2 years at Texas has a playoff or an All-Star race win.
Yeah.
48 points last year in the playoff race there. And then you look 2 years ago to 2020, 46 points in the playoff race, 50 points in the spring race. 45 points or more the last 3 times they've been there. Oh, and a all-star race win there. Of course, weird format stuff aside. On top of that, they had speed at Kansas as well. The most recent mile and a half outscored Kyle Larson at that track 39-33. I really like this track for Ryan Blaney. It's been one of the best statistically in his career. Recently, it's been very strong for them, and they need a really strong start to this round. So I'm a big believer in Ryan Blaney this weekend. That's why he's my first overall pick over Kyle Larson.
I like your reasoning. I don't know if I would have picked him in the 2-3 though.
My question was that if you would have taken him in the 2-3. I like him too much to have given you the opportunity to take him in the 2-3, which is why I had to take him first overall. That's why I wanted the 2-3, because then I could feel better about taking Blaney in the 2-3 and get somebody else there.
Right.
But I just can't pass on him. He's my first overall pick.
I don't think
bold.
think I would have taken him. I don't think I would have.
Okay. That surprises me because you're a big stats guy.
I am a big stats guy. You know how I love my driver averages.
Yeah.
I swear by it. That's my usual strategy for these segments. But I'm gonna now that I have Kyle Larson at my disposal, I don't know if I want to take him. I don't know if I want to take him.
Wow.
Because Texas is not a track that he's been traditionally good at.
So I'm sure there's at least one driver that you want to take for sure in the 2-3, right? There's at least one that you for sure want to take?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get that second overall pick and then we'll discuss for the third.
Okay. Christopher Bell. That's my pick. That's my pick. 100%. I mean,
yeah.
I cannot stress how much I wanted him for this race just because of how good he's been.
Could you imagine if I had taken Christopher Bell first overall though? Like I couldn't.
I would have been more okay with that pick more than Blaney. I thought I could get Bell in the 4-5. No, I was never letting that happen.
Damn.
But I didn't want to take Bell necessarily first overall either. So
That's the mind games of this. That's the mind games.
I'm happy to get him second.
Damn.
Okay. So Bell was definitely my number one pick. Second is a tough situation because I cannot look at the All-Star race whatsoever because
that's fair.
It was such a crapshoot, and the guys that were leading in the top three got wrecked out by a flat tire, and nobody could pass basically from there. Blaney won with the window net down. I mean, it was a crazy race, but I'm gonna go with a guy that just has always been hanging around at this track, get some wins from time to time. Kevin Harvick.
Okay. Going non-playoff in the top three.
Coming to play this weekend.
Okay.
Kevin Harvick. Law of averages. He's got a 0.7 place average finish over the last 5 races here. 1 victory, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s. They weren't that fast in the All-Star race, but I'm going to say that they can right that ship and turn it around a little bit this weekend. Kevin Harvick is going to be a guy to watch, and he's going to be that guy that could be the one that spoils the playoff party this weekend. Could be 4 for 4 to open the playoffs. Those are my first 2 selections, Bell and Harvick.
All righty. The three-time first overall pick still on the board after the top 3. 4th overall, I can't pass on it. I have to take Kyle Larson. 3rd
That's
overall.
fine.
The defending race winner of the playoff race at Texas. Look, you mentioned it. The career stats at Texas aren't phenomenal. He's led laps in just 2 races at Texas. 156 of those laps came last year, and it's obviously a very different car package, everything like that. But I still look at Kyle Larson. I still look at everything there, and it's just too much to pass up on and allow him to get back to you for a 6-7 pick. So I'll take Larson with the 4th pick there. And the 5 is fascinating for me because I really don't know where you're going to go for the 6-7 after your 2-3 pick. And there's
one guy I'm desperately wanting now. There's one guy I really, really want.
Yeah. Damn. I'm going to stick with the playoffs. I really debated going non-playoffs for this next pick. I'm going to stay in the playoffs just because I really like their 1.5-mile program. I'm going to take Ross Chastain 5th overall.
Okay. I can breathe.
I look at Trackhouse, and outside of the road courses where they were really consistent, their best track type has been 1.5 miles. And Ross Chastain has been really solid on the 1.5 miles so far this season. Even looking at their pretty mediocre, uninspiring, whatever you want to call it, round of 16, still picked up 34 points in a top 10 at Kansas. I look at this race. Obviously, you said that there's not a lot you can take away from the All-Star race, and I agree to a certain extent, but it is still the same car and still the same track, and Ross Chastain was up there in the conversation until he decided to become an airplane. So I think that the track type, the speed, and the importance for this team to get on track for this round makes them a really solid candidate to go out and have a top 5 run. So I'll take Ross Chastain with the 5th overall pick here.
That's okay with me.
Okay.
I said it last week.
Yep.
I'll say it again. I'm off Ross Chastain.
Okay.
I don't want to touch him. Not in that way. And I don't,
Jesus Christ.
I don't want to even, look at him for a fantasy point of view because,
You're scared.
yeah, because I think there's some vengeance coming here at some point. There's no way that Denny Hamlin talks the talk and does not walk the walk when it comes to payback for Ross Chastain.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's, I think it's a bit risky on a 1.5 miles for sure. I think it's coming up, and super speedway for sure, but I think it's coming up. If Chastain makes it, or he's on a bubble position going into the Roval, you can bet your money that there is going to be some reckoning there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is some contact and some payback.
The key, though, is that it's Texas this week. Not
100%. But I have not been impressed with their speed as much as of late.
Yep.
So now it's up to me again.
Yep. The 6-7.
These are crucial picks because there's some good guys here. I'm pretty happy with what's on the board here. It's just whether or not I think one guy can fall to me at 10, and I think I could perhaps get him. So I'm going to take the 11 car of Denny Hamlin.
Yeah.
This is not the greatest track for him statistically, but their 1.5 mile speed is too good to ignore. I like that he has the 18 crew. I think that will make a difference for him this week. It's just a matter of will he speed or not, because the 18 car has not made too many mistakes in terms of pit road penalties. I know they're up there in the pit road penalties, but it's been more speed penalties on Kyle Busch's end, I would say, than the pit crew. So I'm going to take the 11 car for my 3rd pick. 4th pick. Damn.
7th overall. Where are we going?
This is a tough one. This is incredibly tough because I'm leaving you 2 guys that I really, really would have loved to put in my lineup too. And I think you might take both of them.
Okay.
But I'm going to, oh man, this is incredibly difficult. I'm going to go by law of averages. I'm going to take Kyle Busch.
You insert expletive here. I wanted him. I wanted him.
Yeah.
Damn.
He's got the best average finish over the last 5 times here. And he was leading the All-Star race when he had the issue. So I can't ignore that fact. And I don't think he's going to end his way with JGR the way it's gone in that first round. I got to think that at least maybe it turns around now after the TRD sabotage that was that first round. I'm kidding on that. I'm kidding. But I do think that he's going to, come to play here in Texas. This has been a track he's been really, really good at as of late, since the repave especially. And I think he's going to be one to watch. I think Gibbs is going to be incredibly fast this weekend. I really like their 1.5 mile stuff. So if they need to get a good race in this round, specifically Bell and Hamlin, I'm banking on it being here.
You've got 3 JGR cars.
Yep.
Better hope they're fast.
Yep.
Alrighty.
I don't like who I've left for you here because I really, really want one guy and I hope he falls.
Okay. Well, I really, really wanted Christopher Bell with my 4th pick, and I really, really wanted Kyle Busch with my 8th pick. So we're in the same boat. Don't you worry about that. Okay. Where do I want to go? The question is, do I go bold or do I go safe?
Are you going to stick with your 9th overall winner pick thing here, or is that out the window?
No. It's my 1st overall pick this time. That's going to win. Okay. 8th overall, I will take a teammate of one of my drivers so far. I've got a Penske guy, I've got a Hendrick guy, but I'm going both Trackhouse cars. I'm taking Daniel Suarez with the 8th overall pick. Again, not a lot of fanfare for it, but a top 10 finish at Kansas last time out at 1.5 miles. And if you look at Daniel Suarez's numbers they're always deceptively low because of his stint with Gaunt Brothers.
Yep.
If you look at his numbers at Texas,
Apart from
excluding Gaunt Brothers, you have 10th with Trackhouse just last year.
Yep.
And before that, third place with Stuart Haas and third place with Stuart Haas in 2019. This is a driver that I think is a bit underrated going into this round. When you look at the track types coming up, you've got a mile and a half, Trackhouse,
100%.
really strong. And you look at the Roval, of course, a track
I
type
almost
that,
like
of
Daniel
course,
Suarez more than
they've
Chastain
won.
in this round.
I'm taking Daniel Suarez with the 8th pick here. I think that Trackhouse is going to have a really strong day and make people go, okay, they're not out
back
to lunch here. Yeah, they're
not at the toast.
Yeah, I always have to get an out to lunch in at some point so you can get your out to toast in. But that leaves me with an extremely tough choice.
There's some good guys here, man.
My final pick here.
Oh my god.
And for me, it's between two guys. And because you have one pick left, I'll just go ahead and say them because you clearly have one guy you like. For me here, it's between the obvious one, Chase Elliott, the current series leader because of the points reset, all that kind of stuff. And Tyler Reddick is the other one that I'm looking at for myself. And it's tough because you look at Chase Elliott and you're like, how could you pass on Chase Elliott with your final pick? All this kind of stuff. You look at his career numbers at Texas, they're not that great. Sure, he's got 6 top 10s out of 11 races. That's solid and stuff.
Yep.
He hasn't led at Texas since 2019. And he has the 7th last year when Hendrick was stupidly good. But before that, 20th, 12th, 32nd, 13th. You got to go way back to 2018 for his last top 10 outside of last year's as well. So I'm not going to take Chase Elliott. I'm going to take Tyler Reddick here to round out my lineup. It's bold taking a non-playoff guy who is with a team that doesn't like him very much. But he finished second, of course, in that Texas race where RCR had the pit strategy and all that kind of stuff where Austin Dillon won. But he also finished top 10 here last year. They've had a couple of really solid runs at Texas. I like RCR's speed overall with Reddick. And I think that they're going to be out to still prove people wrong, that this is a team that Kyle Busch is making the right choice to join. Tyler Reddick is making the right choice as a driver coming up. And so it's a bold play, of course, not going with the series leading Hendrick car. But I think I'm going to round out my lineup here with Tyler Reddick and go a bit bold with my final pick here.
Well, that's who I wanted. So
really? Okay.
That's unfortunate. The only thing you mentioned it, are they going to just give up on that 8 car now with Reddick for the rest? Like, are they going to focus their more efforts now to next season now? Like, it does not matter for them whatsoever for the rest of the season. Realistically, obviously, you want to get highest up in points. You can still mathematically finish 5th, but that's going to be a tall task when you look at their playoff point deficit to some of the other guys that were, higher than him and that most likely won't make it to the championship or could fall out if they're a bigger name and bigger point threat up there. So Reddick, just his numbers here are just pretty damn good. And I do like the 8 car on the 1.5 miles. I mean, he was in the lead at Kansas and he got the flat tires. So I really liked Reddick, but I do have a backup.
Okay. I'm glad.
It's not Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott going undrafted. Wow.
Yeah. I can't do it. I can't do it until he shows me something in the playoffs with speed other than a good finish. I need to see some speed, some stage points, just something here. And I haven't really seen that on the 1.5 mile tracks this season. So apart from Atlanta, I don't count Atlanta as a 1.5 mile anymore. So the guy I'm looking at is his teammate, William Byron.
Yeah. Yep.
Then they went back to their bread and butter. That's why they were good at the start of the season. That's why I thought they were a championship threat in the first 10 races. They were very, very strong, very, very solid all around. Went and experimented over the summer because they had the 2 wins and they could do whatever they wanted. They were fine on that. Did not work. And they've gone back to square one here with what gave them that success. Very, very strong, very, very solid. They finished races in that first round. I like the 24 car. going into Texas. I think they're on the upswing. They're getting their momentum at the right time. Willie B rounds out my lineup for Texas.
I like that a lot. He was one of the other guys that I was thinking about if Elliott or Reddick or whoever was gone. He was the other one I was thinking of.
All righty. Should we go through our lineups one more time before we conclude the show?
Yeah, let's do it. I led it off once again. Not with Kyle Larson this time. I switched it up, taking Ryan Blaney first overall, and still landed Kyle Larson, taking him fourth overall. Rounding out my lineup with Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Tyler Reddick, going a bit bold this week on the Chevys.
Yeah, for me, led it off with Christopher Bell. Really love the 20 car this weekend. Then I went to Kevin Harvick for that next pick. Then the JGR duo of Hamlin and Kyle Busch. To round it out, William Byron completes my Texas lineup as we head to the Lone Star State to kick off the round of 12. Winner pick, you're going with Blaney? Is that what I'm assuming?
I think Blaney gets it done this weekend.
Okay, then myself, gonna go with my first pick, Christopher Bell. I think they break through. They had such a strong first round, like that 20 car lot going into this mile and a half with a lot of momentum. So any final thoughts, Kyle, before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, fascinated to see how this draft plays out, because I think
it's
the
different.
First one
it's different
where it's really been mixed up, where we both drafted guys that the other kind of wanted, drafted guys that the other kind of is questioning and stuff like that. The order is all mixed up.
A little bit of disparity on who we think's going to be
looking forward to see how the race plays out. The on-track product probably not going to be the greatest, but at least the storylines will be there.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for your support this past week. Another great week for the channel. Thank you all for subscribing, liking, commenting. We really, really appreciate it. Keep the love coming, and we'll keep on bringing you some great content here as the weeks roll on, going into as the playoffs advance. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you next week to preview the horror show that is Talladega as the playoffs roll along. Enjoy Texas this weekend, everybody.